Now we'll look at the tracheal wall. We're going to diagram the layers of the tracheal wall first, then we'll go to the microscope pictures and see how it looks in those images there. I've begun by putting the mucosal layer of the trachea here on the wall. The epithelial layer, this orange line, separates the epithelium from those area layers of the mucosa below the epithelium. That's your basement membrane in the orange there. So all this out here would be a respiratory epithelium. Consists mainly of ciliated cells and these dark purple ones represent goblet cells. They have these large mucus masses out here near their surface. Often those mucus granules are divided up into like little bubble-like masses within that outer space of the goblet cell. So anyway, these would be mostly ciliated cells, and I didn't put any cilia on most of that layer there, but anyway, you under the microscope will be able to see these cilia on the surface of this pseudostratified epithelium through here. So that's our respiratory epithelium. Ciliated cells and goblet cells primarily in this surface layer. Next we have that basement membrane, then we have a layer of lamina propria. So there's the basement membrane, lamina propria. Now in the gut, remember, after you pass through the lamina propria, the next layer was muscularis mucosa. You don't see that here in the trachea. The next layer here I have in this pink is called an elastic membrane. An elastic layer or elastic membrane here, and that's the end of the mucosa. The next part will be submucosa. The submucosa in the trachea is populated by a large number of glands. These are called seromucous glands because some of them are serous and some of them are mucus. So you'll see these glandular shapes out here that lead into ducts. That will be going on outside of the layer of to the surface of the epithelium. So some of them are serous, where they contain more dark staining granules, produce more of a watery secretion, and some of them are going to be mucus, where you have much larger clear staining cells, nuclei near the base, generally flattened nuclei near the base, down in here, and no granules out here staining. And here we have some simple cuboidal ducts that lead out. Here in the serous, we'll see the nuclei stand away from the base a little bit, so you'll have round nuclei out there, as we saw in other serous types of glands elsewhere. Otherwise, that tissue is typical of submucosa we see elsewhere, with a fair amount of dense and loose looking connective tissue. This extends out to the next layer, which in the trachea, it's not a muscularis externa, but a layer of cartilage. So we'll get a layer of cartilage out here. Hyaline cartilage, the hyaline cartilage. Now there may be some smooth muscle to the outside of that depending on where you cut it. There may not be any cartilage in the very back of the tracheal structure. The ring of cartilage doesn't join in the very back of the trachea. But anyway, here we'll put a little smooth muscle in right here. So we have, I always refer to this as the cartilage muscle layer. Cartilage and muscle layer. So we have a mucosa, We have a submucosa with seromucous glands. We have the cartilage, smooth muscle zone. And then outside of that, you're going to have an adventitia. The adventitia is going to be a loose connective tissue. And there you'll find vessels and nerves and adipose as you would in other kinds of adventitia. It's not a serosa. There's not going to be a mesothelium on the outside of it. So those are the components we're going to look for in the trachea. We'll look at the epithelium. We'll look for cilia. We'll look for mucous goblets and mucous cells. We'll look at the pseudostratified tissue. We'll look for this elastic membrane in here and the little bit of lamina propria that lies between the epithelium and the elastic membrane. We'll look at submucosal tissues, composition there, see what kinds of tissues we see in there in addition to the serous and mucous glands and their ducts. Then we'll see some cartilage, we'll see some smooth muscle and adventitia. So here we have the first of our trachea slides, the layers of the trachea. This would be the lumen side over here. This would be the outside wall, and adventitia way over on this side. We have a couple layers of cartilage in this particular example, overlapping pieces of cartilage in that cartilage layer out here. There's the epithelium. It's going to be a pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Underneath of that is a thin layer of lamina propria, then an elastic layer right along here. We're going to see examples of that as we go on through. Beneath the elastic layer, this is your submucosa, and in the trachea, it is mostly loose connective tissue and seromucous glands. So there are a mixture of serous glands, mucous glands, and their ducts in that zone. And then when you get outside of the submucosa, we get into this cartilage, and then there could be smooth muscle as well, and then adventitia on the outside. So that's the first of our look at the layers. Here's another looking at the layers of the tracheal wall, our epithelium along here, and a very, very thin layer of lamina propria, followed by a elastic layer right across here. Beyond the elastic layer, we have the submucosa with seromucous glands. And then our cartilage out here, there's no smooth muscle in this view. Adventitia, there's a vessel out here, and there's some fat out on this side. Another view of the layers of the tracheal wall. The epithelium along here, then a lamina propria. The elastic layer is not as prominent in this particular example. We'll look at this in closer detail here in a minute. Seromucous glands over here. A patch of cartilage, one of the cartilage rings of the trachea there. And then an adventitia beyond that. Here's that closer view I promised. There's the epithelium, pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. You can see some of the cilia up on top. We'll look at that later. The elastic layer is not well defined in this particular example. Just a few pink streaks passing through here, separating lamina propria from submucosa connective tissue. And the connective tissues don't look all that different. This is more of a loose connective tissue. It lacks the heavy collagen we see in some submucosa examples. A mucous gland here and serous glands over here. A duct down here in the corner with simple cuboidal epithelium, a low cuboidal epithelium. A lot of lymphocytes all through the lamina propria and submucosa in there. Another view of the layers again. This is epithelium, lamina propria, elastic layer, submucosa, cartilage. Same thing again, you see the pseudostratified columnar epithelium here, lamina propria, elastic layer, submucosa, some seromucous glands and ducts, some vessels in here, and then cartilage over on the left. Close-up view of the mucosis, we have our ciliated cells. You can see the cilia along the top. Our mucus cells are not showing up real well in here. I see a little bit of this mucus tissue, mucus substance, I guess I should call it. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little light dots right in there. Those are little granules of mucus up there in the top of that mucus portion of that mucus cell, that goblet cell. Next would be our lamina propria zone right through here. It extends to this layer where you see not many nuclei, but lots of fibers in there. That's the elastic layer. Beyond that would be the submucosa. Here we have a better view of some goblet cells in the tracheal wall. Those that have this oval light shape right in here, these are mucus cells mixed in with ciliated cells. You can see ciliated cells along here, lots of cilia over here on this side. This is the opening to one of the ducts of one of the gland connections there. The seromucous glands secrete through ducts to the surface. Here's another view showing mucus cells. They're abundant through here. Here's one that's secreting onto the surface when they preserve the tissue. There's mucus being secreted from that cell. But anyway, they have this granular looking mucus in those cells. A very, very thin lamina propria here, and then a layer of elastic material. Then you're in submucosa. These are serous glands showing here. And some venules or lymph vessels in there. Cilia show up really well on this example. So pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium with plenty of goblet cells mixed in. Another view of the same sort of thing. Our goblet cells don't really show up very well in this example, or our cilia, they're kind of out of focus. This is our lamina propria, the elastic layer, then submucosa, and these are glands over here. Looks like a venule passing through right here. This is that same duct I talked about earlier, that here's the mucus cells up on the top, and here we go into a duct of a gland, and right along here you see cuboidal epithelium, simple cuboidal. From that same slide, same coloration you notice on here, we have both serous portions and mucus portions of seromucous glands. Here's a view with diffuse lymphatic tissue in the submucosa. So here's our mucosa zone over here with the epithelium, lamina propria, and elastic layer. Then our submucosa with many seromucous glands, some vessels, and a large patch of diffuse lymphatic tissue, and then cartilage way over here on the right. Another look at the layers showing the trachea, the tracheal cartilage really well over here, this hyaline cartilage. You can see the submucosal zone, you can see the elastic layer. So all the layers show up here pretty well. This shows just some cartilage here, and then further out we have smooth muscle. Now these should lie closer to one another, but in the preparation of the tissue, there was some separation between the cartilage and the smooth muscle there. Beyond that would be adventitia. So adventitia would lie out here. This is our smooth muscle and cartilage combination of tissues there. Now out beyond that smooth muscle, this is the smooth muscle right here, out beyond that in our adventitia, we've cut through a nerve here, and there's a ganglion cell out there in the nerve bundle outside of the smooth muscle in the adventitia. Our last picture, just to show that in the adventitia you do have arteries, veins, and nerves. There's an artery here, a vein here, and a nerve bundle over here. There would be also a fair amount of adipose.